Imagine waking up, like, tomorrow morning. You turn on the news, and you see that crude oil just blew past $100 a barrel.
Right, which is just terrifying.
Yeah. And then you switch over to the financial channels, and they're reporting that the global supply chain for, basic agricultural fertilizer has essentially just frozen overnight.
Completely halted.
Yeah, halted. You go to the grocery store, and the cost of staple goods has totally spiked. And the reason for all of this everyday chaos, it's a massive, unprecedented war involving the U.S., Israel, and Iran.
Right.
But I mean, here's the detail that pushes this completely out of the realm of normal geopolitics and straight into, like, a dystopian thriller. The man supposedly orchestrating the Iranian side of this whole global economic bleeding, he might not actually exist anymore.
Exactly.
We might be witnessing a world order held hostage by an artificial intelligence deepfake.
I mean, I know it sounds like science fiction.
Totally.
But it is actually the absolute defining geopolitical reality of this moment. We're essentially staring at the ultimate geopolitical ghost story here.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. It is April 12, 2026. The world you're navigating today has been completely reshaped overnight by these devastating airstrikes and a really sudden, highly controversial leadership change in the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah, a new supreme leader has been named.
Right.
His name is Mojtaba Khamenei.
And for nearly 4 decades, his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was the paramount, undisputed ruler of Iran.
He is everything.
Right. But following these recent strikes, the son has officially inherited the state.
Inherited being the key word there.
Yeah. Yet, as you pointed out, he's a newly appointed leader who is mysteriously absent.
Completely missing from the public eye.
Right. He holds the highest office in the land, which is a position with, absolute authority over the military, the courts, state media.
Total control.
Yeah, total control. Yet the international community literally cannot definitively confirm if he's physically capable of leading. Or, honestly, even if he survived the attacks that supposedly put him in power in the first place.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically launch a full investigation into the biography of Mojtaba Khamenei.
Right, because we need to figure out exactly who this man is.
Yeah. How did he accumulate such vast, unchecked power without ever actually holding a public office?
Which is wild.
It really is. And ultimately, what his rule, or, the illusion of his rule means for your world, your economy, and your security.
So to map out this biography, we have pulled together this incredibly extensive stack of source materials.
Yeah, we're pulling from international news reports, right? Investigations from PDS, WUSF, the Financial Express.
Right. And we're layering all that with some really deep geopolitical and structural analyses from Zenith Magazine, the Middle East Forum, and Lund University.
Right. And to understand the immediate real-time crisis happening right now, we're looking closely at regional updates.
Right, from NextIAS, Ynet, the Anadolu Agency, and, Wikipedia for the baseline timelines.
Exactly. But before we really jump into the mechanics of how a shadow state operates, we have to lay down a foundational ground rule for you, the listener.
Right. A massive impartiality disclaimer.
Yeah, this is crucial. The sources we're utilizing today contain highly politically charged narratives.
Tons of propaganda.
Propaganda, counter-propaganda from literally all sides of this ongoing, very deadly conflict.
Right. So our mission today is absolutely not to endorse any specific viewpoint.
No, not at all.
And we are definitely not taking sides in the broader geopolitical struggle.
Right. Our objective is purely analytical. We are just here to objectively map out the facts, the claims, the financial mechanics, and the strategic doctrines that are presented in these original materials.
Yeah, because the goal is simply to help you understand the reality of the crisis as it's unfolding today.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. I really want to start by figuring out where a guy like this even comes from.
Yeah, his origins.
Right. If you're eventually going to be accused of running a global shadow empire and a massive military apparatus, what does your childhood even look like?
You'd think it would be pure luxury, right?
Yeah. Was he just born into the opulent halls of absolute power?
Actually, not at all. He was born directly into severe, really dangerous political dissent.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Mojtaba Khamenei was born on September 8th, 1969, in the holy city of Mashhad.
Okay, Mashhad.
Yeah, in northeastern Iran. And to understand his worldview, you really have to understand Mashhad.
What's so specific about it?
It's not just another city. It's a major religious epicenter.
Okay.
It's home to the shrine of Imam Reza. So it's this deeply conservative, historically significant place.
Right.
And he was born the second of Ali Khamenei's 6 children, right in the thick of this super intense religious atmosphere.
Okay, so a deeply religious upbringing, but what about the politics? Because his father was actively protesting the government back then, right?
Oh, yeah. Ali Khamenei was a fierce, super vocal critic of the Shah of Iran,
The secular monarch, right?
right? The guy ruling the country at the time. And the depth of that radicalization is actually reflected in Mojtaba's very name.
Wait, really? His name?
Yeah, he was named after Nawab Safavi.
Okay, who is that?
Nawab Safavi was a highly radical Shia cleric.
Okay.
His birth name was actually Mojtaba Mirlohi. Safavi was the founder of a militant Islamic group called Fadiyan-e-Islam.
And what did they do?
They were responsible for the assassinations of several high-ranking secular Iranian politicians back in the 1940s and 50s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Ali Khamenei once explicitly stated that it was Nawab Safavi who, quote, first kindled the fire of revolutionary Islam in his heart.
Jesus. So naming your son after this figure, that's not a subtle choice.
No, it's a profound ideological statement.
It's literally like naming your kid after a famous militant insurgent. You are branding them with a revolutionary destiny from day one.
Exactly.
But I mean, what did that actually look like for a kid growing up? It couldn't have been a normal, peaceful childhood if his dad was actively trying to overthrow the monarchy.
No, it was anything but peaceful. The PBS source we're looking at provides this incredibly chilling window into his early life.
Okay, what happened?
Well, it details a specific incident that's super vital to understanding his psychological formation. During his childhood, the Shah's secret police,
Right.
an organization known as SAVAK, they actually raided the Khamenei family home.
Okay, can we pause on Savak for a second?
Sure.
Because I think the modern context of, like, secret police gets a bit sterilized in spy movies.
Right. People think of men in suits just asking questions.
Yeah. What did a Savak raid actually mean in 1970s Iran?
It meant absolute terror.
Okay.
SAVAK was notoriously brutal. They were originally established with the help of foreign intelligence agencies to just ruthlessly crush domestic opposition.
Right.
They were infamous for arbitrary arrests, psychological torture, severe physical violence against dissidents.
Wow.
So a SAVAK raid wasn't a polite knock on the door with a warrant. According to the accounts, they violently broke into the Khamenei home and physically beat his father right in front of the family.
That is horrific. I
Yeah.
mean, the psychological impact of watching that as a child, how do you even process that?
Well, you process it by internalizing that the state is an existential enemy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
According to an official biography, after the raid, the other adults in the family tried to shield the children from the reality of what just happened.
Sure, they tried to protect them.
They told the kids their father was going on a, quote, vacation.
Oh, man.
But Ali Khamenei reportedly sat his children down and told them the brutal truth. He said there is no need to lie.
So no sugarcoating at all.
None.
He is exposed to state oppression, violence, the physical dangers of revolutionary politics from the time he is a little boy.
Yeah.
And that has to hardwire a very specific worldview. Like, you learn early on that survival requires secrecy,
Yes.
that violence is a tool of the state, and that you have to build power to protect yourself.
Exactly. And then, the world turns upside down.
Right, 1979.
Yeah, the 1979 Islamic Revolution succeeds. The Shah is overthrown, and the family relocates to Tehran.
Okay.
His father transforms from a beaten dissident into a rising star of the new Islamic Republic.
Wow.
He serves as deputy defense minister, then president, and eventually the supreme leader.
So Mojtaba goes from being the son of an enemy of the state to essentially the son of the king, even if they don't use that word.
Right, the ultimate insider.
So where does a kid with that kind of newfound status go to school?
He attends the elite Alavi High School in Tehran.
Okay.
But the crucial turning point happens right after high school. He doesn't immediately go into theology or government administration.
Which you would sort of expect him to do.
Right. But around age 17, he volunteers for the military. The devastating Iran-Iraq war is raging, and Mojtaba joins the Basij.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand the Basij correctly, because when we hear military, we usually think of a highly organized professional army. But the Basij during the Iran-Iraq war was something entirely different, wasn't it?
Very different. The Basij was a volunteer paramilitary militia established by Ayatollah Khamenei.
Okay.
During the Iran-Iraq war, they were famously driven by intense religious and ideological fervor.
Right, the human wave attacks.
Yes. They were often the ones participating in those massive, highly dangerous human wave attacks against entrenched Iraqi positions.
Wow. and he was right in the middle of that.
Yeah, Mojtaba served with the 27th Muhammad Rasulullah Division, specifically in the Habib ibn Mazahir Battalion.
Okay.
He took part in major bloody engagements between 1987 and 1988, including Operation Dawn 10 and Operation Mersad.
Okay, here is something I noticed in the timeline from the sources that really confused me, and I need you to help me make sense of it.
Sure.
So he serves as a teenager in this brutal war, but he doesn't actually move to Qom, which, is the holy city and the absolute epicenter of Shia theological study in Iran.
Right.
He doesn't go there to seriously begin his clerical training until 1999. He is around 30 years old at that point.
Yeah, he is.
If your ultimate trajectory is to become the supreme religious authority of an Islamic republic, isn't starting your seminary training at 30 incredibly late?
It is a massive, glaring anomaly.
I thought so.
Yeah. In the traditional path of a high-ranking Shia cleric, you enter the seminary as a young man, often in your early teens.
Right.
You spend decades immersed in complex Islamic jurisprudence, philosophy, theology. You study under grand masters. You publish treatises.
You put in the academic hours?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You slowly build a network of religious disciples. To wait until you are 30 to even begin that serious formal process in Qum is practically unheard of for someone destined for the top religious post.
It just makes me deeply suspicious of his 20s. Like, what was he doing for that entire decade?
That's the real question.
Was he just sitting around Tehran?
Yeah.
Because it sounds to me less like he was preparing for a life of pious contemplation and more like he was quietly building a totally different kind of resume.
The sources strongly point to the fact that his so-called lost years were actually his most formative political years.
Okay, how so?
While he was in the Habib ibn Mazahir Battalion and in the years immediately following the war, he wasn't just fighting, he was networking. He served alongside men who would go on to become the absolute titans of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
The real power brokers?
Exactly. We are talking about figures like Qasem Soleimani, Hossein Hamadani, and Hossein Taib.
Wait, Hossein Taib, the guy who eventually became the head of IRGC intelligence?
Yes, Hossein Taib.
Wow.
These weren't just passing acquaintances. These were deep, forged in combat brotherhoods.
Right. You bleed with someone, you trust them.
Exactly. He was establishing unbreakable bonds with the emerging deep state. He was building alliances with the future architects of Iran's military and intelligence apparatus, long before he ever put on the clerical robes in Qom.
That makes so much more sense. It's like a politician running for president who suddenly emphasizes their brief 3-month summer job at a steel factory to relate to blue-collar workers.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
The clerical robes almost seem like a costume he put on later in life to legitimize the power base he had already built with the military.
I mean, the word costume is perhaps a bit strong, but the image is undeniably constructed.
Right.
And this brings us to an excellent analysis from Zenith magazine. They point out how Iranian state media has been working overtime recently to carefully construct and polish Mojtaba's public persona.
So it's deliberate PR.
Highly deliberate. They emphasize his teenage wartime service to connect him to the war generation,
Okay.
specifically linking him to martyred heroes like Brigadier General Nur Ali Shushtari.
Because they know religious credentials alone aren't enough anymore. You need street credibility with the military guys holding the guns.
Precisely. But state media also tries to portray him as a uniquely modern cleric.
How do they do that?
Well, they highlight that he has a strong interest in science, modern technology, and psychology.
Really? Psychology.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they make sure to point out that he speaks fluent Arabic and English.
Wow.
It is a very deliberate PR campaign to present him not just as a dusty theologian, but as a capable, modern manager who understands global affairs and social dynamics.
It sounds totally focus group tested. Like, we need a leader who appeals to the hardline military veterans, but also doesn't terrify the educated, tech-savvy youth in Tehran.
That's exactly what it is.
But despite this polished, state-sponsored image, the reality is that those early military connections became the foundation for how he actually operated.
Yes.
Because he didn't go to Qom and stay there, right?
No, he came back to Tehran.
Right. And he became what the sources call the power behind the robes.
Yeah, that phrase comes directly from a fascinating 2008 WikiLeaks cable.
Ah, WikiLeaks.
Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, Mojtaba operated almost entirely from the shadows of an institution known as the Beiti Rabari.
Which means the house of the leader, right?
Yeah.
What exactly is the house of the leader? Is it just his dad's living room, or is it a formal government office?
Oh, it is much more than an office. It is essentially a parallel government.
Okay.
The Beit Rabari is a massive bureaucracy with thousands of employees. It has its own intelligence wings, its own economic supervisors, its own foreign policy advisors.
So it's like a shadow state within the state.
Precisely. It sits above the elected president and the parliament, and Mojtaba positioned himself as his father's principal gatekeeper within this colossal structure.
Wow.
He held no elected office, he gave no televised speeches, but he controlled who got to see the supreme leader and what information reached his desk.
And according to those leaked U.S. diplomatic cables, he took that control to a shocking extreme.
He really did.
The cables reported that he was actually tapping his own father's phone.
Yes, the supreme leader's phone.
I need to wrap my head around that. How does a son tap the phone of the supreme leader of an authoritarian state without ending up in a secret prison?
You can only do it if you have the absolute loyalty of the intelligence apparatus.
The war buddies.
Exactly. If Hossein Taib, your old war buddy, is running IRGC intelligence and you are the son managing the office, you can implement surveillance even on the sovereign.
That is just wild.
It speaks to an incredible level of audacity, but more importantly, it speaks to a structural shift in how Iran was being governed.
What kind of shift?
The Zenith magazine piece analyzes this brilliantly. They argue that under Ali Khamenei, the Islamic Republic transformed from a purely revolutionary clerical state into a complex hybrid system.
Okay.
Power was no longer just about who knew the Quran the best. Power became a tight, aligned triangle consisting of religious authority, the vast intelligence networks, and the immense military might of the IRGC.
And Mojtaba just placed himself right in the center of that triangle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wasn't just an advisor. He became the central node connecting the clerics to the security state.
Right.
He cultivated incredibly deep ties with the IRGC and the Basij, working hand in glove with figures like Taib to manage domestic affairs.
Okay, let's talk about how he actually flexed that power domestically. Because having a cool job title in a shadow office is one thing, but how did he impact the real world?
Well, he used that power to actively orchestrate the political landscape. And the most glaring examples are the presidential elections.
Right, the elections.
Journalists and international analysts widely believe Mojtaba was the primary architect behind the unexpected 2005 presidential election victory of the hardliner Mahmoud Ahmadinejad.
Wait, how do you architect an election from the shadows? Are we talking about, like, hacking voting machines?
In the Iranian context, it is much more physical and structural.
Okay.
It begins with the Guardian Council, which is a body heavily influenced by the supreme leader disqualifying reformist candidates before the race even begins.
Well, they clear the field.
Right. But Mojtaba's specific contribution was reportedly mobilizing the Basij.
The militia.
Yes. He used his deep ties to this paramilitary force to have them act as an aggressive get-out-the-vote machine for Ahmadinejad.
Oh, wow.
Intimidating voters and allegedly engaging in widespread ballot stuffing in key districts.
So he uses his dad's authority to clear the field legally and his military buddies to force the result on the ground physically.
Exactly.
And this gets even darker in 2009, right? Because Ahmadinejad's re-election sparked the massive Green Movement protests.
Yes, millions of people in the streets.
Yeah.
The 2009 election was widely seen as blatantly fraudulent. And when the people poured into the streets to protest, the state response was brutal.
Right.
Mojtaba is widely speculated to have been the central commander of that violent crackdown.
Wow.
Once again, utilizing the Basij militia he controlled to just crush the dissent.
And the people on the street knew it.
Oh, they definitely knew it.
I read that during those protests, the crowds weren't just chanting generic anti-government slogans. They chanted something incredibly specific and dangerous.
Yeah.
They shouted, "Mojtaba, may you die and not see the leadership."
Mojtaba, may you die and not see the leadership. Chanting that in Tehran in 2009 while Basij snipers are literally on the rooftops is an act of immense bravery.
Seriously.
But it shows that the public was fully aware of what was happening. They knew even back then that he was the enforcer and that he was being quietly groomed for a dynastic succession.
And it wasn't just angry protesters. Politicians were calling him out.
Yes.
Mahdi Karoubi, a major reformist presidential candidate who was later placed under house arrest, he actually wrote open letters to the supreme leader explicitly denouncing the interference of the master's son in rigging the election.
To which Ali Khamenei reportedly replied with a defense that just backfired spectacularly.
What did he say?
He said Mojtaba is a master himself, not a master's son.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He was trying to validate Mojtaba's independence, but to the public and the political elite, it only further solidified the terrifying reality that Mojtaba was untouchable.
The analogy that keeps jumping to my mind is a corporate fixer, or like a shadow CEO of a massive, ruthless monopoly.
That's a very accurate way to look at it.
He is the guy pulling all the levers. He's firing the dissident board members. He's hiring the private security muscle to break up strikes. He's deciding the overarching corporate strategy.
Right.
But you look at the official organizational chart, and his name is literally nowhere to be found.
Nowhere.
But if you have all the power to make the decisions, yet hold no official title, don't you also escape all the legal and political accountability when things go wrong?
You've hit on the exact genius and profound danger of the shadow CEO model.
Right.
Because Mojtaba held no official, elected, or formally appointed government position other than working on the staff of his father's office. He was entirely invisible to the system's oversight mechanisms.
Wow. So no one could question him.
Exactly. He wasn't subject to parliamentary questioning. He couldn't be impeached. His budgets weren't publicly debated.
He just bypassed
He
everything.
bypassed the normal checks and balances of the state bureaucracy entirely.
He is a ghost in the machine.
And being a ghost allowed him to build something else entirely out of the public eye.
Okay, what did he build?
While he was ruthlessly managing the political and security affairs of the Iranian state, he was simultaneously building a massive, highly secretive global financial empire.
Okay, this is the part of the story that absolutely blew my mind.
It's staggering.
Because if you consume any Iranian state media, the Khamenei family is portrayed as living this incredibly pious, modest, almost ascetic lifestyle.
Very simple.
Right. They wear simple clothes, they eat simple food.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be the living, breathing embodiment of the 1979 revolutionary ideals.
Right, rejecting corrupt Western materialism.
Exactly, and living humbly alongside the working class.
That is the constructed narrative. But the financial reality, which was meticulously uncovered by international investigations, paints a staggeringly different picture.
Oh, yeah.
A massive year-long investigation by Bloomberg, which was then corroborated by reporting from the Financial Express, revealed a multi-billion-dollar property and financial network linked directly to Mojtaba Khamenei.
And we are not talking about a nice, quiet summer home in the Iranian mountains. We are talking about prime, ultra-luxury, global real estate.
Oh, the highest end possible.
The Bloomberg investigation found derelict, massive mansions on London's infamous Billionaires' Row, the Bishop's Avenue, estimated to be worth over 100 million British pounds.
Over 100 million.
Yeah. They found a luxury villa in what is known as the Beverly Hills of Dubai. They uncovered interests in a prime Hilton hotel in Frankfurt, Germany, and a high-end resort in Mallorca, Spain.
And connecting back to your point about the shadow CEO escaping accountability, it's really crucial to understand how these assets were held.
Right, because his name isn't on the door.
Exactly. You couldn't just look up the deed to a London mansion and see Mojtaba Khamenei listed as the owner.
So how did they do it?
These assets were masked through incredibly complex, multi-layered offshore financial structures.
Okay, I want to slow down and really understand the mechanics of this, because I think a lot of us hear terms like offshore accounts and just picture a guy with a briefcase of cash in a Swiss bank.
Right, like a movie.
Yeah. How does a shadow network actually buy a 100 million pound mansion in London without raising massive red flags?
It relies heavily on jurisdictions famous for financial secrecy.
Like where?
We are talking about shell companies incorporated in places like the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus, the Isle of Man, St. Kitts, and Nevis.
Okay.
Here is how the mechanism essentially works.
Yeah.
A shell company in the British Virgin Islands, which requires zero public disclosure of who actually owns it, creates a trust.
Okay.
That trust then buys shares in a company registered in Cyprus.
Still untraceable.
Right. That Cypriot company is then listed as the legal buyer of the real estate in London.
Wow. So it's a Russian nesting doll of paperwork designed entirely to hide the true human being at the center of the money.
Exactly. And to make the illusion perfect, the network relied heavily on what are known as frontmen.
Right. A fall guy or a face.
A face. The Bloomberg investigation specifically identified a man named Ali Ansari. Ansari is a wildly wealthy Iranian construction tycoon, and he was essentially identified as a central facilitator for this global network.
How does a frontman operate in this scenario? Do they just sign the papers?
It's more complex than that. The frontman uses their legitimate business empire to commingle funds.
Oh, I see.
Ansari, who was actually sanctioned by the UK for his ties to the IRGC, allegedly facilitated the acquisition of those London mansions and the German hotel.
Okay.
On paper, It looks like a wealthy private businessman making normal international investments. The money moves through legitimate banking channels under the guise of corporate expansion.
Okay, though, to be fair to the sources, it must be noted that Ansari has vehemently and publicly denied any financial relationship with Mojtaba or acting as his frontman.
Right, but I mean, of course he denies it.
Right, that is literally the job description of a frontman. If you admit you are laundering money for a shadow leader, you aren't a very good frontman. But that brings up the most glaring question of all. Where does the capital for a $3 billion secret fortune actually come from? The Iranian economy has been crippled for years.
It has. The investigations point directly to the illicit sale of Iranian oil.
Okay.
This entire network functioned by bypassing the severe international sanctions placed on Iran's energy sector.
How do you bypass global sanctions on that scale?
They utilized ghost fleets.
Ghost fleets?
Yeah, oil tankers that turn off their automatic tracking transponders to literally vanish from global monitoring systems.
That's insane.
They conduct these incredibly dangerous ship-to-ship transfers of oil in the middle of the ocean at night. They mix the Iranian crude with oil from other countries to disguise its origin.
Wow.
And then they sell it on the black market, primarily to buyers in Asia.
And that's where the billions come from.
Yes. The massive revenues from these illegal sales are then funneled back through that labyrinth of shell companies we just discussed, eventually turning into prime Western real estate.
But this exposes a massive, glaring contradiction in global politics. I really have to push you on this.
Sure.
In 2019, the U.S. Treasury Department placed very heavy, very public sanctions directly on Mojtaba Khamenei.
They did.
The U.S. government explicitly sanctioned him for acting on behalf of the supreme leader and advancing oppressive domestic objectives.
Right.
So how on earth did the Western financial systems in the UK, in Germany, in Spain allow a network tied to a heavily sanctioned, hostile official to buy up their prime real estate?
It is an excellent question, and the answer highlights a massive vulnerability and a deep hypocrisy in the global financial system.
Yeah, hypocrisy is the word.
While governments announce loud public sanctions, their own domestic banking and real estate sectors often fiercely resist regulations that would require true transparency.
Because they want the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The use of those offshore shell companies allows the beneficial ownership, meaning the actual human being profiting, to be entirely obscured. For decades, Western real estate markets and financial institutions have kind of turned a blind eye to anonymous wealth pouring into their cities, because the influx of capital inflates property values and generates massive fees for lawyers, accountants, brokers.
Wow.
As long as the shell company paperwork looks technically legal, they simply do not ask where the money ultimately originated.
So they essentially write the loopholes into the laws so they can keep profiting off the money of the people they are supposedly sanctioning.
It's the unfortunate reality.
It's astonishing. And it's not just real estate. This immense wealth provides an escape hatch when things get really hot. Look at what happened earlier this year.
Right.
Fast forward to January 2026. Iran is being rocked by intense domestic protests over a crushing economic crisis, with inflation hitting 40%. People can't even afford groceries.
Right. And while the people are starving, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announces intelligence showing that Iranian leaders are frantically wiring tens of millions of dollars out of the country to secure havens.
And it wasn't just traditional wire transfers. Israel's Channel 14 reported a staggering detail.
It's a crypto transfer.
Yes. $1.5 billion in cryptocurrency was secretly sent to an account in Dubai.
Unbelievable.
And Mojtaba alone allegedly transferred around $328 million of that. How do you even move $300 million in crypto without crashing an exchange?
Well, you don't use public exchanges like Coinbase.
Okay, then how?
You use over-the-counter or OTC crypto brokers who specialize in high-volume, anonymous transactions. You use cryptocurrency mixers that literally scramble the digital trail of the tokens.
Wow.
It is the modern digital equivalent of stuffing a private jet with duffel bags of cash, bypassing the SWIFT banking system entirely.
It is the ultimate hypocrisy. We also found a report from London University and The Telegraph that noted back in 1998, despite all the fiery death to America, death to the UK rhetoric he grew up with,
Right.
Mojtaba actually traveled to London. He stayed at a luxury hotel on Park Lane for 2 full months.
Yes, he did.
Why? Because he wanted Western medicine. He was seeking fertility treatments for his wife, Zara Haddad Adel, at high-end private clinics like the Wellington and Cromwell hospitals.
It perfectly illustrates the duality of his existence. anti-Western revolutionary rhetoric for the domestic audience, while utilizing Western luxury, banking, and medicine for his personal life.
Exactly.
But it is super crucial to understand that this extreme wealth, this multi-billion-dollar empire, was not just a retirement fund for Mojtaba. It
Right?
was a massive power base,
Yeah.
and it was heavily guarded and facilitated by the IRGC.
The military again?
The Revolutionary Guards had a deeply vested interest in keeping Mojtaba and the massive illicit financial pipelines he controlled in power. They were mutually dependent.
Right. Which brings us to the geopolitical earthquake of early 2026.
The moment everything changed.
The moment the shadows were violently dragged into the light. In late February 2026, the ongoing tensions boiled over into a devastating joint U.S. Israeli airstrike. The target was the Supreme Leader's compound in Tehran, and the strike was catastrophically successful. It killed the 86-year-old Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei.
It was a true decapitation strike.
But the casualties extended far beyond just the political leader. It wiped out the core of the dynasty.
The whole family.
Mojtaba lost his wife, Zahra. He lost his mother. He lost his sister, his brother-in-law, and several of his young nephews.
It was an absolute, instantaneous obliteration of his immediate family and the top tier of the Iranian state apparatus.
I cannot even fathom the shockwave that sent through the regime. In the immediate aftermath, there is a total vacuum of power.
A massive vacuum.
How did the state respond to suddenly losing the man who had held absolute authority for nearly 40 years?
Panic.
Yeah.
Just pure panic, followed by immediate coercive action by the military.
The IRGC.
The IRGC, desperate to maintain control, prevent domestic uprisings, and project continuity to the world, exerted immense pressure on the civilian and religious structures.
Okay.
On March 8, 2026, a body known as the Assembly of Experts held a highly irregular, incredibly rushed vote.
Stop there for a sec. What is the Assembly of Experts, and how are they supposed to function in a normal scenario?
The Assembly of Experts is an 88-member body of Islamic theologians. According to the Iranian constitution, their sole purpose is to elect, monitor, and theoretically, if necessary, dismiss the supreme leader.
Okay.
They're supposed to be an independent, deliberative body of the wisest clerics in the land.
But I'm guessing with the military in panic mode, there wasn't much deep philosophical deliberation happening.
None whatsoever. Reports indicate the IRGC essentially forced the decision. The assembly announced that Mojtaba Khamenei had been unanimously elected as the third supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Unanimous. When 88 politicians vote unanimously on something hours after a military strike, you know exactly how much free will was involved. And the international reaction was instantaneous. U.S. President Donald Trump publicly criticized the selection immediately, dismissing Mojtaba as a lightweight and bluntly stating he cannot live in peace.
The international condemnation was totally expected, but the domestic ideological crisis this rushed succession triggered within Iran is far more profound and potentially destabilizing.
Why is it so destabilizing internally?
You have to understand the foundational mythos of the 1979 Islamic Revolution.
Right, the whole reason they overthrew the Shah.
Exactly. The entire revolution was fought explicitly against the concept of a hereditary monarchy.
Right.
They bled to overthrow the Shah because they argued leadership should be based on Islamic jurisprudence, piety, and merit. Absolutely not on bloodline.
Right. The whole premise was we are getting rid of kings.
Exactly.
And now, by forcefully installing the son of the previous absolute leader, they have essentially dropped the revolutionary mask.
Yes.
They have returned to dynastic hereditary rule. They just swapped a secular king in a suit for a clerical king in robes.
Precisely. Supporters of the regime attempt to justify this by employing intense theological gymnastics.
Like what?
They try to frame the succession through the historical lineage of the Shiite imams, arguing that leadership historically passed within the Prophet's family line, thus giving Mojtaba a divine historical precedent.
Yeah, that's quite a stretch.
It is. And critics, reformists, and many ordinary Iranians see right through the rhetoric. They see it for exactly what it is. A naked, militarized power grab by the IRGC to protect their economic monopolies and their survival.
And what's really fascinating is that the pushback isn't just coming from, political dissidents. There is massive, heavyweight theological resistance to Mojtaba taking this role.
Huge resistance.
Let's dig into the religious credentials here, because this is where the regime's carefully constructed narrative completely falls apart on a technical level.
It falls apart entirely. According to the Iranian constitution, the document they themselves wrote, The supreme leader must be a mujtahid.
Explain Mujtahid. Give me the, explain it like I'm 5 on the clerical hierarchy.
A mujtahid is a scholar who possesses a specific, highly exalted level of religious competence known as ijtihad.
Okay.
This means they have the capacity to perform independent legal reasoning in Islamic law. They don't just follow the rules. They are qualified to interpret the divine law and issue binding fatwas.
Okay, so it's the highest level.
Yes. To achieve this, you must study for decades, publish complex theological treatises, and be recognized by your peers as a master. You are essentially an Ayatollah.
Right.
But officially, despite his new title, Mojtaba Khamenei is only a mid-ranking cleric. His official title is Hujjatul Islam. He is fundamentally a rank below Ayatollah.
So he literally, technically, does not meet the legal job requirements written in their own constitution to hold the office.
Correct. And the absolute heavyweights of the global Shia religious community are calling him out on it.
Oh, wow. Ooh.
Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani in Iraq, who is arguably the most respected and followed Shia cleric in the world, along with Grand Ayatollahs Vahid Khorasani and Musa Shuberi Zanjani.
Really? They called him out?
They're officially refusing to acknowledge Mojtaba's status as an Ayatollah.
What does a rejection from Sistani actually do? Is it just a theological snub, or does it have real-world impact?
It has massive real-world impact. Sistani has millions of devout followers who look to him for spiritual and practical guidance.
Right.
If he declares that Mojtaba lacks the religious competence Gigi had to lead, he is delegitimizing Mojtaba in the eyes of millions of believers.
Wow.
It means religious taxes may stop flowing to the regime, and the moral authority that keeps soldiers and citizens loyal evaporates. Even a group of seminary students from Qom and Mashhad took the incredibly dangerous step of releasing a statement accusing the IRGC of creating a religious monarchy.
So the analogy here is incredibly stark. It is exactly like the board of directors of a massive, struggling, multinational corporation being held at gunpoint in a locked boardroom by their own private security team.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
The security guards put a gun on the table and say, you are going to name the dead CEO's wildly unqualified son as the new boss right now, and you're going to tell the press it was a unanimous decision.
Just to keep the company running.
Right. They do it just to keep the company's internal structure from completely collapsing into civil war. But all the shareholders outside, the industry experts, the regulators, they are looking at this kid and saying, this guy isn't qualified to run a cash register, let alone a global conglomerate.
Exactly.
So what does this actually mean for the legitimacy of the Iranian state today?
It means the ideological and religious legitimacy of the state has been entirely hollowed out. It no longer exists.
Wow.
The regime's survival now rests solely, 100%, on the brute coercive power of the IRGC.
Just military might.
Just that. But establishing even that terrifying, coercive legitimacy is proving nearly impossible because of the bizarre, unprecedented, and deeply unsettling reality we're currently facing.
Which is?
The new absolute leader of the country hasn't even been seen in public.
This is where the story shifts from a gritty geopolitical thriller into absolute mind-bending science fiction.
It really is sci-fi.
Since that devastating February airstrike that wiped out his entire family, Mojtaba Khamenei has just vanished. There is no verified proof of life. There's certainly no proof of leadership. We are looking at a landscape of wildly conflicting, terrifying reports about his physical state.
Let's lay out those conflicting narratives because they represent two entirely different realities.
Okay.
The official line from Iranian state media is almost casually dismissive.
What do they say?
They claim that Mojtaba suffered only minor injuries during the bombardment, some superficial lacerations to his face, and a minor leg injury.
Okay.
They explain his survival by claiming he miraculously happened to be out for a brief walk outside the compound just minutes before the bunker buster missile struck.
Out for a walk during a massive, coordinated, multi-wave international bombardment.
Right, exactly. And they insist he is in full health, actively recovering, and in total absolute control of the state apparatus.
But then you look at independent regional intelligence reporting, and it paints a horror story.
Yes, a complete contrast.
What are they reporting?
Reports from Ynet and the Voice of Emirates, citing embedded hospital sources and regional intelligence, report a catastrophic medical reality.
Okay.
They state he was caught directly in the blast radius and suffered horrific, life-altering injuries.
Oh my God.
We are talking about severe amputations, one arm completely incapacitated, at least one leg paralyzed and possibly amputated, a dislocated jaw, severe, irreversible spinal cord lesions, and massive traumatic brain injuries.
So he is not running the country. He is literally fighting for his life.
According to these intelligence reports, he is currently in a semi-comatose state, relying on a ventilator in a heavily guarded intensive care unit at Sinai Hospital in Tehran.
Wow.
Or, if you believe a report from the Kuwaiti newspaper Al Jazeera, the situation was so dire that he was secretly transferred to Moscow for highly specialized neurological treatment under the direct orders of Vladimir Putin.
Jesus. And the regime knows these rumors are out there. So they tried to do what any government would do. Release proof of life.
Right.
On April 6th, 2026, they released a video to the world purporting to show Mojtaba Khamenei walking into Iran's war room, looking resolute, to direct the ongoing conflict.
Yes.
But it backfired spectacularly, didn't it?
It was a total disaster.
What happened?
Almost immediately after the video aired, BBC Verify, alongside several senior open-source intelligence journalists, analyzed the footage frame by frame.
Okay.
Their conclusion was definitive. The video was entirely manipulated using artificial intelligence. It was a deepfake.
I want to know exactly how they proved that, because AI video generation is getting terrifyingly good right now.
It is, but it's not perfect.
So how did BBC Verify catch the ghost in the machine?
They look for the forensic mechanics of manipulation. AI still struggles with specific physical realities.
Like what?
Well, the analysts pointed out highly unnatural, inconsistent lighting sources, shadows falling in directions that didn't match the actual lights in the room.
Oh, that makes sense.
They noted pixel blurring and a lack of resolution cohesion around the jawline, which is a classic hallmark of face-swapping technology.
Wow.
There was a complete lack of natural microexpressions. The face looked like a rigid mask. And the audio frequency analysis showed signs of algorithmic synthesis, meaning the voice didn't match the acoustic environment of the room.
They caught all of that.
Yeah. Furthermore, the few written statements issued in his name since the strike have contained highly unusual spelling errors, jarring logical inconsistencies, and a rhetorical tone that completely clashes with his known historical writing style.
Which brings us to a fascinating and deeply unsettling analytical concept. The Middle East Forum published a piece recently, and the author, Michael Rubin, coined a term for this exact scenario.
Yes.
He calls the current situation Schrödinger's Ayatollah.
It is a brilliant and really terrifying analogy.
Yeah.
Like the famous thought experiment of Schrödinger's cat trapped in a box, where the cat is theoretically simultaneously alive and dead until the box is opened and observed. Mojtaba Khamenei is simultaneously alive to the regime and dead to the intelligence community.
Wow.
He exists in a state of quantum geopolitical superposition until someone can crack open that heavily guarded ICU and prove his physical state.
Let me update my analogy from earlier then. It's no longer just a shadow CEO.
Right.
It's like the CEO of a massive corporation suddenly dies in a plane crash, but the corrupt board of directors refuses to admit it.
Yeah.
Instead, they realize the CEO had an automated email account that is still sending out pre-scheduled firing notices, authorizing massive wire transfers, and ordering hostile takeovers. The board just pretends he is still sitting in his locked corner office, and they're using his digital ghost to force the entire company to obey their orders.
Exactly.
But how does a military even function like that? Don't generals need to actually talk to their commander?
In a traditional Western military, yes. But the IRGC operates on a doctrine that military analysts call a mosaic command.
Bring that down for me. How does a mosaic command actually work in practice?
It is a decentralized command and control structure specifically designed for regime survival in the exact event of a decapitation strike.
Ah, so they plan for this.
Yes. In a mosaic command, you don't need a central headquarters issuing minute-by-minute orders. Authority is pre-delegated to regional commanders and specific autonomous cells.
Okay.
If the central leadership is wiped out or communications are severed, these independent units just operate based on preset doctrines and standing orders.
So the system is designed to keep fighting even if the brain is dead.
Exactly. The theory is that the IRGC, which remember isn't just an army, it controls a massive domestic business empire worth upwards of $100 billion, is using Mojtaba's name as a literal legal front.
Because they need his signature.
Right. They need the signature of the supreme leader to legally validate their military actions and maintain their grip on the domestic economy, so they're simply forging it.
Wow.
In fact, intelligence suggested that Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, was actually the one managing this mosaic command behind the scenes.
Oh, really?
Yes. Until he was ironically also killed in a subsequent strike in March.
Oh my God.
It is just a completely crumbling facade.
And the physical manifestations of this propaganda inside Iran are just surreal. I mean, we've read descriptions of the billboards currently up in Tehran.
The billboards are a perfect example of a regime completely losing its grip on physical reality,
What's on the...
because they obviously cannot show recent, healthy, verified photos of Mojtaba. They are resorting to bizarre, heavily stylized imagery. Journalists on the ground report seeing massive billboards showing Mojtaba with a visibly missing arm and his legs completely obscured by the framing of the image.
Wait, they're showing him with a missing arm. Are they trying to slowly admit he was injured?
It appears to be an incredibly clumsy attempt to visually adapt to the overwhelming street rumors of his amputations without actually confirming any weakness.
So they're leaning into it.
Yes, they are trying to turn his catastrophic injuries into a badge of martyrdom. And to overcompensate, they have paired these bizarre images with aggressive, fake, threatening quotes bizarrely attributed to Adolf Hitler.
Hitler quotes.
Yes, in a desperate attempt to project ruthless strength and warn any potential domestic collaborators that the state is still lethal.
It reeks of absolute desperation, but it raises a profound, terrifying question for the international community. If U.S. President Donald Trump or European leaders or the UN needs to urgently negotiate a ceasefire to stop this global economic bleeding, who exactly are they talking to?
That is the ultimate question.
Are they negotiating with a man in a coma? Are they negotiating with a deepfake? Are they negotiating with a ghost?
That is the ultimate crisis of Schrodinger's Ayatollah. If the IRGC is running the country using an AI avatar of a critically injured or deceased man, any diplomatic agreement is built on sand.
Because who signs it?
Right. President Trump has publicly stated he wants to negotiate an end to the conflict. Reports suggest the U.S. back channels are desperately trying to engage with the Iranian parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, treating him as the real rational actor in the room.
But legally and constitutionally, the authority of the state rests solely with the supreme leader.
Exactly. And if Mojtaba is a phantom, there is literally no human being who has the legitimate authority to bind the Iranian state to a peace treaty.
And while the high-level diplomatic circles try to figure out if they are talking to a ghost, the actions being taken in this ghost's name by the military are having very real, very devastating consequences for you, the listener.
Yes.
Because this isn't just an abstract political drama playing out 7,000 miles away in the Middle East. It is hitting your wallet, your gas tank, and your grocery store right now.
Let's trace that immediate global impact because the chain reaction is terrifyingly fast.
Okay.
The ongoing war, combined with this massive vacuum of clear, rational leadership in Tehran, has resulted in the effective military closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz. We hear that name constantly on the news whenever there is tension in the Middle East. Remind everyone exactly why that specific narrow strip of water is considered the geopolitical jugular vein of the entire global economy.
Geography dictates destiny. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow corridor of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the open ocean.
Okay.
At its narrowest point, it is only 21 miles wide, and the actual shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide in either direction.
That's tiny.
It is, and yet roughly 20% of the entire global oil supply must pass through that specific bottleneck every single day.
And right now, it is a war zone.
Yes, with the IRGC operating autonomously in survival mode under their Mosaic command, they are utilizing swarms of fast attack boats, anti-ship missiles, and sea mines to threaten commercial shipping.
So ships can't get through.
Consequently, massive oil tanker traffic has plummeted as insurance premiums skyrocket.
And the immediate result of that supply shock, crude oil has spiked to over $100 a barrel for the first time since the early days of the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Exactly.
So every single time you pull up to a gas station and fill up your tank, you are literally paying the Schrodinger's Ayatollah tax. The decisions made by a shadow command using a deepfake leader are draining your bank account.
But it gets worse, right?
Oh, it definitely gets worse. Because it's not just about the price of gasoline.
Right.
The next high IAS report we analyzed highlights how this specific chokehold on the strait has triggered massive secondary crises that most people don't even see coming.
Exactly.
Well, it has created a severe liquid petroleum gas, or LPG, and fertilizer crisis in India.
Which is an absolute catastrophe. Let's break down the mechanism of why that matters.
Okay.
India relies heavily on natural gas and LPG imports moving through the strait to power its vast agricultural sector.
Right.
You need natural gas to synthesize ammonia, and you need ammonia to produce agricultural fertilizer. The next Thai AS report notes that India currently faces a 20 to 25% exposure to these fertilizer supply chain disruptions.
And why should someone listening in London or New York or Sydney care about a fertilizer shortage in India?
Because when you severely disrupt the fertilizer supply to a nation of 1.4 billion people, you aren't just impacting local farmers. You are threatening the delicate balance of the entire global food supply chain.
Right.
Without fertilizer, crop yields plummet. When India's wheat and rice yields drop, they stop exporting. When global supply drops, prices for basic staples skyrocket everywhere.
Let me just connect the macro to the micro for a second so we fully grasp the insanity of this interconnected world.
Go for it.
A joint U.S. Israeli missile strikes a heavily guarded compound in Tehran. The Supreme Leader's family is killed.
Right.
A shadowy military group panics and props up his potentially comatose son using an AI-generated deepfake video.
Yep.
Because this military group is now operating autonomously without any political restraint, they heavily mine a 21-mile strip of water.
Exactly.
Because that water is mined, a natural gas tanker can't get to Mumbai.
Yeah.
Because the gas doesn't arrive, a massive chemical plant shuts down.
Right.
Because the plant shuts down, a farmer in rural India can't fertilize his wheat fields. The wheat yield drops by 30%. And because of all of that, the price of a simple loaf of bread in your local supermarket shoots up, and your winter heating bill doubles. You are paying the price for the actions of an absent leader.
And we must deeply consider the psychological context that is driving those autonomous military decisions. Even if we assume for a moment that Mojtaba is miraculously conscious and somehow involved in the command chain.
Right, his mindset.
We discussed earlier that he was raised in violence and that he just lost his father, his wife, his mother, and his sister in a single fiery airstrike.
The psychological trauma of that is just unimaginable.
Analysts point out that this level of profound personal trauma, combined with his historically radical views, is a recipe for massive escalation, not diplomatic de-escalation.
Right, because his historical views are much more aggressive than his father's, aren't they? I remember reading that his father, Ali Khamenei, famously issued a religious fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons.
He did. But Mojtaba's stance is different.
Very different, right?
Very. Western intelligence analysts have long described Mojtaba as being much more aligned with the ultra-hardline factions of the IRGC who are open to a rapid nuclear breakout.
Oh, wow.
He historically opposed his father's anti-nuclear fatwa behind closed doors. So if he is awake, and if he is grieving, his political psychology is currently shaped entirely by unimaginable loss and a deeply embedded cultural narrative of martyrdom, resistance, and revenge.
So he wants blood.
A senior Iranian official recently leaked a report stating that Mojtaba's supposed first internal message to the military demanded that the U.S. and Israel be, quote, brought to their knees.
Brought to their knees.
He reportedly rejected all third-party de-escalation proposals outright. He is prioritizing absolute revenge and massive deterrence over any form of compromise.
So to go back to the analogy, if the IRGC is truly running the show and using Mojtaba's image as a shield, it's like we are trapped on a runaway train heading toward a cliff. Right. The mannequin sitting in the conductor's seat obviously isn't going to pull the brakes, and the military guys shoveling coal into the engine don't want to stop. They want to go faster to prove they aren't afraid of the crash.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. The IRGC's core defense doctrine in a moment of existential crisis is to strike out autonomously, massively, and unpredictably to ensure the survival of the revolutionary system.
Right.
They do not need a conscious, functioning supreme leader to launch asymmetric drone strikes across the region or to permanently close a vital shipping strait. They just need his digital image to legitimize the fight to their radical base.
And this precarious, totally unprecedented situation leaves the entire global geopolitical and economic order just balancing on a razor's edge.
It really does.
Okay, let's step back, take a breath, and summarize the incredibly dark journey we've just taken.
We've covered a lot.
We started by looking at a young boy in the conservative city of Mashhad, traumatized by the brutal, violent raids of the Shah's secret police. We tracked his rise from a teenage soldier launching human wave attacks in the bloody trenches of the Iran-Iraq War to a silent, unseen, unelected gatekeeper operating in the total shadows of his father's absolute power.
And we unpacked a staggering, multi-billion-dollar contradiction.
Huge contradiction.
A man who demands a pious, anti-Western Islamic revolution at home, while allegedly hoarding vast wealth in London mansions and Dubai villas, funded by illicit ghost fleet oil sales and protected by the very military forces he commands.
And finally, we arrived at the surreal, terrifying reality of today.
The ghost in the machine.
Right. We're looking at the invisible figurehead of a war-torn, dynastic military state. A leader who might be dead, who might be lying on a ventilator in a coma in Moscow, but whose name and AI-generated image are currently being used to spike global energy prices, disrupt the food supply of over 1 billion people, and push the world closer to the brink of a catastrophic wider war.
Which forces us to confront a final, truly chilling concept to just mull over. Well, throughout human history, great empires, monarchies, and authoritarian regimes have almost always collapsed when absolute power finally passed to a weak, unqualified, or physically absent heir.
Right, the system breaks down because the center cannot hold.
Exactly. But we are living in an entirely new era. Today, with the rapid advent of undetectable deepfakes, AI video generation, and autonomous military command doctrines, we have to ask a question that was pure science fiction just 5 years ago.
Which is?
Could a modern, deeply entrenched military-industrial apparatus like the IRGC theoretically run a massive country indefinitely using a completely incapacitated or even deceased leader as a digital puppet?
Wow, that alters the very definition of a nation state.
It really does. If a state's legitimacy is no longer derived from public consent, or even from the religious authority of a living human being, but is derived entirely from brute coercive force and seamless digital manipulation, does the physical reality of the leader even matter anymore?
It's terrifying.
What happens to the fundamental concepts of global diplomacy, of war, and of peace when you can no longer definitively prove that the person you are at war with actually exists in the physical world?
That is a thought that will keep you up at night, and it completely changes how you look at every single video coming out of a conflict zone.
Absolutely.
We started this deep dive looking for a clear diagnosis, hoping to find a precise explanation of exactly who Mojtaba Khamenei is and what his leadership means for all of us.
Yeah.
Instead, we found a broken machine spitting out manipulated AI images to hide a potentially terminal condition at the heart of a global empire. It turns out the murky, shadowy waters we waded through today aren't a mistake. They are the regime's ultimate strategy for survival. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives you see on your screens, look past the constructed images, and always, always ask who is really benefiting from the shadows.